Well, we had compatibility up until 10 years ago, and then a conscious decision was made to move to hostility. This was actually a contrived move to try to stop China's successful economic development. The origins of it are that from the 1970s to around 2010, China was viewed as both a constructive partner, a trade partner, and geopolitically helpful to the United States for quite a while. Remember when Richard Nixon went to China, the idea was a kind of triangulation, that there was the U.S. Cold War with the Soviet Union. By the U.S. warming up with China, this would help to put more pressure, it was thought, on the Soviet Union. So there was an instrumental idea that the U.S. would get closer to China. Starting in 1978, China undertook remarkable economic reforms, arguably the most successful economic reforms in world history, because China went from being an impoverished economy in 1978 to being one of the most successful, dynamic, arguably currently the most successful economy in the world today, during a period of just a bit over 40 years. Now, during that time, U.S.-China economic and political relations were good for most of the period, actually. A lot of Americans were making a lot of money by selling things to China, or making investments in China, or integrating Chinese companies into global supply chains. And America, on the whole, benefited enormously from China's economic growth, though some places in America faced intense import competition from China and suffered, but others boomed. California boomed, no question, as a result of the growing U.S.-China trade. Probably places in the industrial Midwest were hit by the increase in competition from China, but net, the U.S.-China relations were very positive. Now, starting around 2010, American strategists, I use that, I think it's a euphemism because I think they're idiots, basically, as you know. I don't think that they're strategists at all. Oh, we'll see if it's Clinton or Bush Jr. or Obama or Trump 1 or Biden or Trump 2. This is not actually how foreign policy works. It's the Pentagon, the CIA, the deep state, the military-industrial complex. And starting around 2010, these strategists said, oh my God, China is too successful. We need to do something. In 2015, a very interesting article, horrible on one level, because I think it's foolishness to the maximum, but insightful also to the maximum, was written by a former colleague of mine, Ambassador Robert Blackwell, who was a professor at Harvard, then a senior U.S. diplomat, and another leading specialist, Ashley Tellis. And the paper in 2015 was written for the Council on Foreign Relations, so you could put a link to it because I believe it's openly available. And it declares bluntly that America's goal, or its grand strategy, is primacy. In other words, the grand strategy of the United States is to be number one. And China's rise, these authors say, is a threat to America being number one. They don't say China's evil. They don't say China's done something terrible. They don't say that China is a threat to U.S. national security or prosperity. They say that China's success is a threat to the American grand strategy of being number one. Okay, if you're in a high school clique, maybe that's your goal. If you're grown-ups in a world where there are dangers of nuclear war, where you need cooperation, where there's mutual gains from trade, the idea that being number one is a meaningful idea when you're 4% of the world population, and the idea that the success of another country is harmful to you because they're successful, not because of what they're doing, but because they're successful, is, to my mind, so mind-bogglingly wrong-headed. But that became the core of American policy. And in this very interesting paper, which I really would like people to read with their own eyes because it's incredible, it says we must stop China. It's no longer in our interest for China to be successful. And they list all the things we should do. For example, one of the incredibly stupid ideas was we should have a trade arrangement for the U.S. and Asian countries that excludes China. It's like kids on it. You take a map, we put an X over China, but we trade with all the others, not noticing that all the others have their main trading partner, China. But Obama really tried to do that. He tried to launch something called the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was a trade group that would exclude China. Okay, this was another one of these ideas that belongs in the dustbin of history, and it did never materialize. But the list goes on. We should stop exporting technology. We should break relations. We should increase our military bases around China's rimlands. We should do other things, restrictions on investments, trade barriers. Why? Because America needs to be number one, so we have to do whatever we can to harm China's economy. Now, today, I was just reading the typical columnists of the Washington Post and the New York Times and Financial Times, and every one of them treats China like an enemy. Just naturally, we have to prepare for war. They're an enemy. We have to be smarter in our trade policy than Trump because China's going to take an advantage. Everything is not about American interests or American well-being or the American people. It's about this game, like it's a board game. So you ask me, why do we hate China? Because we were told to, starting 10 years ago. Because it became the strategy of the United States to harm China. By the way, how do you think Chinese officials in government and business feel about this, that another country is overtly aiming to harm them? Is that conducive to peace, to goodwill, to normal behavior, to the security of the United States of America? Of course not. We're provoking. But it's so clear from this article. People should read it. So this is the basic point. And I just have to add, I've been visiting China since 1981, so 44 years. I've toured all parts of the country. I've studied Chinese history extensively. I've published about China. I've written very extensively about the Chinese reforms. China is not an enemy. China is not doing anything to threaten American security. There is no reason for the United States to view China's well-being as harmful to America's interest, nor did China's rise hurt the United States. But our political system is so broken that if major parts of the U.S. benefit, but one part, say the industrial Midwest, say in Ohio or Indiana, hurts, we don't have a policy to help those people. Our policy is to attack China, even though the overall relationship is mutually beneficial. So, by the way, every day there's a drumbeat of war right now on our side. I was in China, by the way, recently, just a couple of weeks ago. They just look on in amazement. What is going on in your country? What is it? What is this hostility? Why does the president fulminate every day about us they are doing right now in electric vehicles? It's because the United States has no policy. You know, Trump just pulled the plug literally on electric vehicles and on the incentives and so forth. Okay, we handed China the world market for electric vehicles. And then we say, oh, they've got overcapacity in electric vehicles because they're selling electric vehicles all over the world. Then we have to put up tariff barriers because we have no sensible industrial policy whatsoever. And so this is not China's fault. China's just diligently following the future, developing new efficient energy sources, 5G technology, open source AI, fourth generation nuclear power. I toured factories recently. Incredible integration of artificial intelligence systems and robotics in highly sophisticated solar module factories. Incredible what I saw. And we complain. They're just doing a good job in manufacturing. What is Trump doing? Trump is attacking the universities, cutting the research budgets, driving scientists from the United States to China or to other parts of the world, and then whining about all those terrible things the other countries are doing to us, all that unfairness.